The 360 Info. I'm your host, Hamtonio. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. Welcome to the show. Yeah, we got a great show for you today. I see the sun is shining a little bit outside. That's okay. We'll take that. We'll take it. Some things going on around the globe, around Cleveland. Hey, this is some interesting times for us. So we got to keep ourselves uh, to connected. That's a good word. We got to keep ourselves connected to what's going on because it's plenty. It's plenty and some serious decisions and some hard decisions is going to have to be made as far as this country is concerned on which direction that we're going to go. That is the big question. That is the big question. We're in this fork in this road, and what are we going to do? But at the same time, Black folks still have this issue that I see of identifying who they are and what they are. And we got conspirators all over the planet doing their best to keep us from the truth and hide us from the truth. And I think it is critical that we know who we are so we can move forward and do something about our situation. Because if you don't know who you are, then everybody is taking off in different directions and actually kind of find themselves protecting and dealing with information that is totally out of order and not in any type of harmonious way of doing anything because you don't know who you are in a collective. So we got our good brother coming on today, but before I introduce him, we're gonna go to our remote studio and talk to our brother Vince. Vince, what's going on?
We got a lot going on in Cleveland this weekend, including the Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival. So I would encourage you to go to the website gcuff.org and find out what films are showing and which ones you are interested in. Get a ticket, get a pass, support. It is a great festival. It is one of the premier festivals, and best of all, it features the work of Black filmmakers. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, just wanted to mention briefly that I did attend the event that we had promoted last week. It was 1,000 Black men, boots on the ground. They want to engage Black men in the voting process. So I went to the event. Mayor White did deliver quite a stirring speech yesterday. And former Mayor Frank Jackson was also there, and former Council President George Forbes was in attendance as well. It was a great situation, and I did a write-up on Facebook, so you can check out my Facebook page, and you'll find out all about what happened last night. So that's what's going on. I'll be leaving Cleveland to go to Pittsburgh to shoot the Pittsburgh Jazz Festival as soon as we get off the air today. So that's what's happening on this side of the planet. It gives me a great deal of honor and pleasure to introduce you to the person who has joined us for today's broadcast. He is Asar Imhotep. He has a new website address, so we're going to make sure that you get that so that you can find out about all the great things that he's doing. But with that, I want to introduce you to someone who is not a stranger to 360 Info Network. He's been with us several times, and we always look forward to the knowledge that he brings because this brother brings it. Welcome to 360 Info Network, brother Asar Imhotep.
Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Thank you for having me once again. I am always honored and feel blessed to converse with you, good brothers, and your audience. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right.
Right on. Well, we appreciate you taking out the time to really, to come and talk to us. It's just always great, and we tend to come and check with you time to time to get some updates, on your research and some of the projects that you're doing. So with that being said, is there anything upcoming or any projects that you're working on or still working on that our listening audience need to know about?
Well, yes, there's several things coming down the pipeline. And of course, I'm always researching and publishing some things, and I'm getting ready to publish a children's book. It's not mine, but it's for Dr. Chilima Lima Mukinge, who we published his previous book, Muntu Wa and Zombie, Human as God's Special Creation. And it's an analysis of the Baluba people and their religious tradition in comparison with other African traditions. So, but the next book, the children's book, is going to be a fictional tale, but it's going to be fully colored and alike. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I am preparing and making the steps in terms of this reanalysis of a reconceptualization of hip hop and hip hop culture under the label of Jashe. And we may have time to go into it later, but I know y'all will appreciate my play on words with the word jazz, and we will be dealing with the evolution of jazz into hip hop, the underlying philosophies, its connection to Africa, Haiti, New Orleans, and trying to institutionalize that so that we could use the best of that tradition to deal with and address some of the things that you started off this conversation with. So those kind of things are in the pipe, and so I look forward to engaging with y'all once those things are more solidified and done.
Yes. Well, that's good. Definitely, you definitely keep us abreast of what's going on, because this is a platform for you in order to do that. It's about spreading information, and definitely, the children's piece, because that is the key. Dr. Amos Wilson, said, and I, quote and keep quoting, and it has to resonate. I got to drill it in folks' head to make it resonate, that if we don't teach our children to fix our current issues of today, then what are we doing? You know what I mean? We just gonna be on that hamster wheel, never moving forward, and I think that's an important piece that we really have to understand. Whatever we're going through right now, we have to have the means, the institutions, whatever, however we do it, however and whatever we do, to teach our kids and fortify them with the information that they need, to help us move our people from whatever deficit that we're suffering at this point. If we can continue to let the system, take the reins and dictate the narrative on how our children move forward, then how are we ever going to get out of this? They're going to, like I think about something our brother Kamene, Hiawatha Kamene said, he said, they doing what they supposed to do. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to let you overtake them, and we got to understand that they're never going to do anything that's going to help you take to help you take their foot off your neck. They're not going to help you do that. So we have to think in those terms in order to move forward, my brother. So the next question I would ask you is, I know with our good brothers, our ancestors, and what our brothers did over in Egypt, and philosophizing and talking about the upcoming cycles and things like that. I think you're fully aware of these cycles and going into Aquarius. There's a lot of information starting to come out, and that's starting to make a lot of people uneasy about this consciousness, especially on the continent, and this awareness and things of that nature is starting to make a lot of people uneasy. And I think, and I'm seeing some of this stuff across the globe. What is your take on that, brother?
You muted, Asar.
Sorry. Yes. Well, y'all know I'm no stranger to the controversies and the backlash of Africans reclaiming African history, especially with those in Northeast Africa, now known as the Arab Republic of Egypt. I put in the the back chat, the private chat of this live discussion, a link for y'all to kind of have and see. And I just want to kind of read something real quick. And it is dealing with, so the link that I sent you is the latest. So if you remember from 2022, myself, Dr. Theophilo Binga, the Hoppy crew, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and
Professor
a
Small.
whole bunch of others, Professor Small, Rosalind, of course, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, the wife of Dr. Leonard Jeffries, you know, and a host of others were to go to Egypt, and we're going to have a conference in Nubia talking about, you know, the African heritage and reclaiming our histories, and what does this, you know, kind of mean moving forward. So everybody on this panel are top-notch scholars, world-respected scholars, and so the mere presence, the mere idea of us coming to Egypt started a backlash where there was a lot of protesting, and there was even threats to a couple of people's lives, if I understand correctly. And, you know, this is something that we have to face on a daily basis, just trying to share this information, because people don't want to deal with the fact that they're holding on to artifacts in a history that doesn't belong to them, and that is related and relatable to peoples as far as West, Central, and Southern Africa, right? So the link that I sent you and what you're sharing right now is from a news outlet in Egypt for the calling for the removal and the banning of Afrocentric scholars from entering Egypt, period. Right. And so, like, you can see some of the photos now. This is all in Arabic. So, you know, unless you can read and speak Arabic, you won't be able to really kind of fully grasp what was going on. And so what they do is, so you know that YouTube has a capture feature where it'll translate for you, the closed caption feature that'll translate for you. So they always disable it so others can't figure out what they're talking about unless you know the Arabic language. So the person who sent this to me is a Sudanese brother, and he's been fighting some things, you know, as a Nubian fellow who lived in Sudan and Egypt. And so he was just giving me some insight into what was being said. And so this isn't an exact translation. It's kind of a rough translation, but the idea is that you get the idea of the extent of what they're talking about. So I won't take up too much time, but I'll just present this. So it says, the guest: Afrocentric was founded in the U.S. as a rebellion against slavery by African American communities. They see ancient Egypt civilization as a reference to Black people in the U.S., only, he said, to overcome the hardship of slavery. They use some of the paintings on the walls to refer to themselves, to refer as they Black people, like the picture of the god Osiris painted black. The Egyptians were Black, and things, and it represents a deeper meaning in ancient Egyptian spirituality regarding the afterlife, et cetera, et cetera. And so the TV presenter, you know, asked, why is this so controversial? The guest answers, because it's escalated recently, and when they tried to make a conference in Aswan, but the Egyptian authority had stopped it. So this was another conference that was supposed to be happening, and so you saw like in the videos, Dr. Kaba leading a tour or something in what it looks like the Cairo Museum that he was in, and so you can see the host with the glasses on right now, and then there's a guest there, and so they're talking about taking legal action. And the guest is saying that we have to fight these ideologies with ideologies. We're not just talking locally, but we need to speak to Western world and the U.S. and we need to make our own movies and documentaries to beat them at their own home, right? And so like it's a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm just letting you know, like, they have waged war on trying to stop African people from reclaiming ancient Egypt as African heritage, as the ancient Egyptians as Black people. And so you couple that with what they're talking about doing an all-out media blitz, and to even seek legal action to refuse entry by Afrocentric scholars and people in general into Egypt. Now you look at what's going on here in the USA, like in places like Florida and Texas, where they're putting all these laws in place so that you won't teach Black studies, African history, and even critical race theory, which was a master level course in the university, but they wanted to stop it at the head and try not to have it being taught in your K through 12 schools as well. So we're the reason why there's a lot of people not being able to identify with some of the things that we're talking about, because there is a concerted effort in all parts of the globe to suppress our story and to block our voices in the scholarship, from coming out and bringing about these histories, because it doesn't paint the European or the Arab in a very good light. And so what we say to that is, so what? It is a history that we have to know so that we don't repeat it again, and they're more worried about their feelings versus the forward movement of humanity. And this is why these conversations and these texts and this research is vitally important, because people just don't understand the extent to how far others are going to ensure that we do not have a voice, and that the truth does not get told about who we are, what our history is, and our relationship to the world. And that is foundations. So
that's amazing. You're absolutely right, because you have to think about it, and this is a part of our awakening that should be our awakening, because of the efforts that are taking place. I mean, they already did a good job in hiding so much information on this continent about us, and some of the things that has been done to us, the dirty, those things are just not coming out. And our ancestors talk about it and prophesied about the information coming out and the changes and things like. So I think they feel so threatened. They feel so threatened about this. So, and that's the question. And could this be on why they linked up with Hawass, that they came out here to America to start touring and talking about the Egyptians is Black? And I mean, you're thinking here in America that this tour, this threat is going to amplify, and we're going to see more of this to come. Is that what you're saying? And so is this what we should be warning our people about, or should we be preparing ourselves for this assault?
Yes, we should be preparing, and we've been preparing, but we need to be more vigilant about our goals and our efforts. And African people outside those who adopt Christianity or Islam are really non-proselytizing people. and that has suited us well for thousands of years. However, in this climate, we're going to have to adapt and be more proselytizing in our message, being more aggressive in terms of getting the word out, because these people are there's a large group of them that believe it is their divine right to suppress Black people, African people, and they're working from a religious point of view for this. Others are working from an economical standpoint, right? Because they've been able to make money by promoting this idea that these histories are really connected to European people and ancestors. And then when you have these African folks saying, oh, no, that is incorrect. This is our history, and this is how we can prove it. That because in their eyes, African people and Black lives are so diminished that they envision that if we start associating this stuff with African people, then the value of certain the artifacts and everything is just going to go down, and they're going to lose money. And more importantly, they're going to the Blacks are going to want they stuff back, which we already do. But that's another conversation for another day. But we're going to have to, because you heard what I just read, and that was only some of it. Talking about we're going to have to make our own documentaries and come to them. So they're talking about they're banning us from Egypt, but coming to the United States to wage war on us regarding the information regarding ancient Egypt.
Right. And that's the thing though. We have, that I just want to talk about for a second and really conceptualize and really understand, because I think most Blacks we talk about it, but it don't really sink in what is actually going on, and this how people are so threatened. Why is it so threatening? Why is it so threatening about talking about the truth or letting folks know, because he's done a great job of confusing the whole planet, about things, because we still in this little quagmire of just everybody's here. You got this group over here, this group over here, this group over here. You find it out. I was just, looking again at a video from the brother that was talking about how Africa colonized China. And I remember my good brother Wayne Chandler talking about that. I was sitting in a lecture with him about 20 so years ago, talking about our presence in China and Japan and things like that, and I also recently, some months ago, ran across a small piece of some of the people in the Mayan regions, in South America, kind of pushing back a little bit of this, of us coming to reclaim our history here, and then you can get it here. We're coming aware of our presence here in North America as being more ancient than what it was led to believe our presence here. So we go, and then hold on, I got one more, and then information is coming out about our presence in early Europe. Up in Ireland and Jacobites, and saying that those coats of arms up there, all these black images and things of that nature. So this awakening of information, and is it in Egypt's case? Is it all about money? They think if those images and everybody conform and agree that they were black, Pharaohs back there, is it going to stop the tourism business? That what me and my good brother Dr. Brown was talking about. You think it's about that, or is it something deeper here?
I think it's something deeper, but that is definitely part of the conversation. because again, as I stated, for the past 2,000 years, in various contexts, Europeans and Middle Easterners have been exploiting African people for so long that, you know, they've been able to sustain their economies off of the exploitation of African people. So when African people start to rise up and gain their independence and reclaim their sovereignty and start making moves on the for the benefit and on behalf of African people, that automatically means that, you know, their source of income and their source of power is now going to be taken away from them. So this ultimately ends up being about money and things, because now they can no longer be running around here like they are the authorities on African and world history in general. And so, you know, that's on one thing. But then there's, you know, we have to address this fact as well. So just because African people have such a great and glorious history, and in their aspects of it that's not so great and glorious, that does not mean that everything that is great and glorious in the world has to deal with African people as we understand. Because, you know, because it just depends on how far you want to go back. Because ultimately, again, the world in terms of Homo sapiens are African people. But from the context in which we understand what African means in the modern sense, not everything in the world is rooted in the genius of African people. And we have to allow for those true histories of these other groups to be able to be told, and for them to be able to own their history in the same way that we want to own ours. And so just because certain things sound good and sound plausible does not make it so. And as African people, as truth tellers, we always want to be at the forefront of rigor and scholarship. So we just don't let anything pass, right? We must understand subjects fully within their context, within logic and the like. And this is just a caution for you know, because we're battling these people who claim that we're indigenous Americans and the like, but all refuse to take DNA tests and can't explain native languages, customs, rites and rituals, whatever it is that they, you know, will want to hold on to certain things, all because they want to be anti-African. So I know that, you know, y'all are in a media space and y'all may or may not be as prevalent on the other social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, X, and the like. But if you're on these programs, if you're on these platforms, you'll know that there's this growing thing of, you know, African Americans who are claiming that they're no longer African Americans, that they're not Black, that they're indigenous, that they're not African, they have nothing to do with Africa, and all this other kind of stuff. So we got the Arabs we're fighting over here. We got the Europeans in Europe, the Europeans here. And so that's why we have to create these groups to be just like the special forces in the military, who fight, you know, threats, both domestic and foreign. So we got the foreign enemies that we have to deal with in terms of scholarship, and then we have the domestic ones that, you know, who are anti-African, anti-Black, and we, you know, so we're fighting on all fronts. And at the end of the day, our scholarship has to be top notch, so that, you know, because this is how you're going to win the babies in the long run. Right.
Yeah. You know, that's the old adage, and when they talk about our divided house, you know what I mean? So, you know, I got to go back and halfway quote my good brother Amos Wilson again. You know, the best way to immobilize a people or group is to keep them consumed in their own discord. never getting anything done. So, that's been the play and that's been the game forever. But, what I would just have to say, and, to our listeners and people that tend to bank on logic sometime, why so much attention? Why so many lies? Why so much attention is being put into keeping a lid on the truth or just information about it? Why does somebody go through so much of a great length to keep a lid and not tell the truth and to just promote their side of the story and things of that nature? So that's why it's so important for us to have these institutions, and for us to awaken from the source, because you can have these institutions, but still perpetuating the same craziness and putting out the same type of product that is keeping you in this this place, this familiar place, and this that we're in right now as Black people. But I believe in our ancestors. I believe that like this country, nobody stays on top forever. If you understand and know history at all, nobody stays on top forever. This little time that we dealing with right now in the scheme of dealing with time is just a little short time that we're dealing with what we're dealing with right here. And our ancestors got it right. This truth is going to come out, and this change is going to happen the way if you like it or not. It's going to happen. It's going to come out, this information. So what you're seeing right now is the scramble. What you're seeing right now is the scramble of them folks. And, they want their country back here, and they talking critical race here, so they're trying to keep a lid over here. So all these tentacles is out there trying to hold down the truth, but it's going to boil over and it's going to come out. So before I get your take on the Sahel stuff and some information that I just reminded myself. We stumbled upon a video talking about all the information that's underneath the Aswan Dam. These villages, 45 different villages in Nubia is covered with water and things like that. That's just a testament again on how they trying to hide the truth and keep the truth away from us, as well. We're gonna bring our good brother Brother Vince into this particular conversation. My brother.
Yeah, I just had a couple of observations. Earlier in the program, we were talking about education, and education is knowledge, knowledge is awareness, history is what we are concerned about. And to think that they would want to erase our knowledge of the past and our connection to it. But then when we look at the purpose of education in our society is more about indoctrination than it is about self-knowledge and so forth and so on. And that's why there's such a war over our headspace. And it's really disheartening to think that we would be more concerned with what's going on with Diddy and Jay-Z and all these other things. And we're not really focused on these things that are really important to our survival. When we talk about war, we always think in terms of weapons, missiles and bombs and things getting blown up and everything. But there has been a war that's been in progress for a long time, and it's really serious. And we really have to take these conversations, such as the ones that we're having right now, a lot more seriously, to think that brothers like Ashra Kwesi and Kaba Kamene and the whole Hopi film movement, all these folks who are bringing our attention to that part of the world and the importance of those things, would be denied the opportunity to express. I'll never forget being in Egypt or Kemet with Dr. Runoko Rashidi and having security trying to put a muzzle on him because they want folks to focus on what the guide is saying and not what an African-centered scholar who has been studying this for his entire life would have to say about the things that we were seeing. It's just ludicrous. But to the point that you made, Brother Hamtonio, we can't expect our oppressor to give us knowledge about ourselves that would empower ourselves. I saw a video earlier in the week of Dr. Kawanza Kunjufu, and he was just talking about left brain learning versus right brain learning. And the left brain learning that they are giving our children in school it's counterproductive because it doesn't give them the balanced learning approach that they need to be successful in life. So it comes back to the necessity for us to educate ourselves and not depend on others to educate us. And that's why it's so important that brothers like Asar are doing what they do. But I guess the real question that I have, Brother Asar, is how do we engage our own people in pursuing this knowledge and information and pushing back on the algorithms that are programming them into a mentality that doesn't really fit their survival?
Well, that is a multi-front assault that has to happen. But the first has to be with the self. And to the point that if African history and the study of African history and knowledge and the adoption of African value systems and social ways of being is in fact right and exact and valuable, then it should be seen in our lives for the people to see and be drawn to it because of the aura, the success you obtain, and the character that you exhibit as a human being. So before we can truly just be out there teaching, we have to embody the values of what it means to be African and human in the greatest sense. And we have to figure out ways in which this information, at the end of the day, translates into food, clothing, shelter, and great human relations. If we can do that in our personal lives, it will shine and it will exhibit. Because, you know, you have to know your people. And Black folks don't believe nobody when it comes to information and things being shown. We are the show me people. Before you try to come proselytize it on me. See, it's different with like the religious stuff because they kind of grew up on that. And we have, you know, centuries of history, you know, and in terms of the institutionalization and stuff like this. But being African-centered or whatnot, people are going to be skeptical about it because, you know, for a long time, there was this notion that one had to be kind of a poor righteous teacher. And in this place of inflation, and it costs so much to buy bread and the like, right? And we're worried about living paycheck to paycheck and jobs and the like. There has to be a different way and approach for the people. And so it shouldn't just be simply that, you know, the Dogon knew where Sirius B was, right? Like, it's good information, but who cares? But if you create a program where a lot of young people can come after school and learn how to put together telescopes, let's just say, right? And to look in the stars and calculations and how this information can be put on a resume that will help them to get an internship to a job or something to this nature, or, you know, then that's a totally different conversation. Because again, a lot of the conversation that we want to have with our people is really for the people who have been in it a while, who can digest this and understand the information for information's sake. But the vast majority of our people, it's the day-to-day that they have to deal with. So if ancient Egypt is so good and worth knowing, how is it going to improve my relationship with my wife and kids? How does that information, what can I grasp from there to make my bond with my wife stronger, with my husband stronger, with raising my children? That's when the stuff becomes valuable. How can I deal with my health as I get older? Right? What did the ancient Egyptians say about health? What does the Congo say about health? And can I see that in your life? Like, are you walking around agile? Are you at the parties, you know what I'm saying, at 70 years old, still getting down and the like? Right? Because at the end of the day, you are the walking billboard for the values and the history that you want to give to others. So let's find ways in our personal lives to make this applicable and beneficial, and then share what you've learned, mistakes, you know, that you've made in the past processes, how you've adjusted. Because it doesn't mean that you just take everything wholehearted without any kind of adjustment for the place and the time that you're at. So how did you adjust? So that's what I've done with the Jashe tradition in terms of reconceptualizing hip hop culture, because the way that hip hop is being portrayed, it is really the personification of death, and that's not what it started with. And so there's certain connections there that if we don't institutionalize it, if we don't grab a hold of it and become the authorities on it, this will be another part of history that'll be lost, and that others will try to claim and will benefit from it for generations to come. And you're starting to see that, to where people are talking about Eminem is the greatest rapper of all time, right? Like that doesn't even make sense. And so it's, you know, you got to understand jazz. Where does jazz come from? What does the word jazz mean? What languages did it derive from? Jazz is all over West Africa, but because it's coming out of New Orleans, it is primarily dealing with the Wolof, Sierra, you know, Fulani type people who brought that term, and it has to deal with a particular party. The same thing with the word jam. You know, people don't understand that the first hip hop outdoor parties were called jams. There was no hip hop term back in the day. You went to the jams. What is a jam? A jam is a jazz term for a particular session. But these ideas or the retentions that we kept from Africa in the place called Congo Square, and those rhythms, those band rhythms, because people think, you know, when people hear jazz nowadays, they think it's just some smooth Kenny G type music. Jazz has always been street, what we would call today street upbeat music. You dance to it. And there's variations of the word in the West African languages that means dance. So you're supposed to be able to dance to it. And you, in the jam sessions, you would go to the jams to dance, but it's part of a healing process, because movement is medicine in the African traditions. And when we want to heal, we gather and we dance. to the drums. Like this kind of history, this is how you make it applicable for the people. Get them where they at. They want to party, okay? Let's have a party. Let's break all of this stuff down. Have a good time. Don't you feel better? What do you do with that sense of calmness? How does this, liven and keep your body moving? What do they say about, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? These are the things, like you have to understand the history. You have to understand your people to know how to apply it and make it applicable for them, right? And so, like people don't know there's 2 Congo squares in the United States, one in New Orleans and one here in Philly, right? And that might be the reason why Philly has such a strong soul and music tradition here. Same thing with New Orleans, because these Congo squares, what does that mean? So we can talk about Egypt. I can trace that word jazz all the way to Egypt. You'll find 2 or 3 different variations of that word in the ancient Egyptian language. This is how you piece everything together so that, people can understand themselves in the history. Mm-hmm. But, I could go on, but I'll stop.
Well, I just want to jump in real quick and thank you for that about the origin of the word, because there are certain people in the jazz community that push back on the term jazz because they say that it was a European slur, so to speak. When they used the word jazz, it was kind of in a pejorative sense. A couple weeks ago, I was at the Detroit Jazz Festival, and Christian Scott, who I think is now chief of DUA, brought up that idea. And, so there's this idea of describing it as Black American music and not using the word jazz. But if you're saying that the term jazz actually has African roots or an African origin, then it kind of pushes back on the idea that, and Miles Davis was another person that didn't like the word jazz. He didn't want to have his music described as jazz. So this is really, really enlightening, bro.
Yeah. You're on mute, Asar.
Yes. I'm thinking of 2 texts. So one text that I recommend is Africanisms in American Culture, the 2nd edition. And it is edited by Joseph E. Holloway. And the other text, I'm trying to remember it. So, for example, I have am I allowed, and I know you're on the radio.
Yeah, you can screen share.
All right. So, for those of you who are listening, I know that, you're going to have to go to YouTube to see the presentation. So, y'all make sure you do that. So I'm going to share my screen. Right. And let me know. Okay. So now I'm going to, from the current slide. So this is the text that I'm talking about. This is one of the texts. This is Africanisms in American Culture, edited by Joseph E. Holloway. And this is Joseph Holloway. And there's going to be, because I've done lectures on this, there's a chapter in here on retentions of African words in African American vernacular English that has just become part of the English word. So even the word rap itself is an African word that has been retained in the South, and so it is like when you talk about Sierra Leone, this is kind of in the Guinea area, right? And it means to con, to fool, to get the better of someone in verbal play, right? To speak to greet, to flirt, to make a pass at a girl, to speak in a colorful way, to tease, to taunt, to con, to fool, right? So, when somebody's spilling a rap, it's kind of exaggeration, just fly speech. And it's from this tradition in West Africa, in these languages, and we're saying it just how it is in West Africa. So here, from the same text, of course, is the word jazz. So you in BaNtu languages, you would say jaja, which is to make dance, and it says the obsolete forms jas and jasi. Now it's ironic because when I was first presenting this information to a colleague of mine, a Yoruba brother who's an engineer, and he informed me, so like in most Yoruba texts, it'll just say ja as a word for dance. But where he was at, he was like, the word, they still say in his area, jasi, for the word for to dance in the party, right? And so, again, this is from the text, obsolete forms, jasi, numerous applications to speed up, to excite, exaggerate, an active and unrestricted extreme way, a copulation, frenzied dance, fast music, exaggerated talk in Mandingo language, jasi, to become of a normal character, in Wolof, yas, and Timne, yas, to be lively or energetic to extreme degree. And this is what I'm talking about, like with jazz music, it was always up tempo because traditionally we're playing on the drums, and all our stuff was up tempo, right? Even when we adopted the European instruments, everything was up tempo, and this is why, like, when you go to New Orleans and you hear the second line, funerals and all this, everything is upbeat with the exception of the first part of the second line. For those who know the second line, it's sad music at the beginning, but then it ramps up for the party. And right. We know Frankie Beverly just passed, and his family hasn't had a funeral for him yet, but he was so well beloved in New Orleans that they gave him a jazz funeral, right? With him not even being there. They had a cutout of him in the tomb.
Yeah, I see
and
that.
They did a second line, but that's African. Matter of fact, we're familiar with the Dogon people because of Marcel Griot. What people don't understand is Marcel Griot lived with the Dogon for like over 30 years, and he even fought on behalf of the Dogon against the French, for which he was a person in the military, in the army. So he fought his own people for the Dogon, and he was initiated into the Dogon lore. So when he was back, Marcel Griot was back in France, and he had passed away. Once they got the news that he passed away, they gave him a priest, a king's funeral. And they did exactly what the people in New Orleans did with Frankie Beverly. And it's all on video. You can look this up on YouTube. Right? New Orleans is the most African city in the United States. Second comes to where our folks are in the Gullah Geechee Islands, right? And like, this is the word they have on here for jam, but here's the other text that I wanted to hip you to. And this is by Zola Sona, the Fulfulde Pular province of Jive. So even like when you say in the Jive Turkey, that's even an African term, right? And so this is a linguistic analysis that was done some time ago and you can see their analysis. For example, the word jam. And so when you see for full day, that's just Fulani or Pular. The group is known by different names, right? And it comes from a root meaning to sing in songs and the like. So when you would like with my family is critical in the birth and the proliferation of Zydeco music out in Opelousas, Louisiana, right? And I would hear about these stories about the elders who would just have these quote unquote jam sessions under trees out in the country in Opelousas, right? And where they would have the jam sessions, and they would all be, you know, part of these songs that they would call the jams, right? And this is where we get these terms for. And more on the jam.
Okay, I got to interrupt really quickly, and we're gonna extend the program into YouTube and Facebook at the top of the hour, because what you are uncovering right now is extremely fascinating, and I think people need to know. Want to encourage those of you who are listening on the radio to join us on our YouTube channels. You can go to Vince Robinson. You can go to The Journey with Hamtonio and join us on YouTube. You can also go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page, and you can see our broadcast there. We are speaking with Asar Imhotep. He is a cultural theorist and software developer. He's a scholar and a historian. We are definitely blessed to have him with us today, and we're going to continue to learn about these nuances in linguistics that define us. You know, it's interesting, brother Asar. We kind of push back on our Africanness, some of us do, but based on what you're sharing with us, there's no escape from it. You know, it's who we are. So anyway, yeah, we got about 20 seconds before we depart. So as always, I'd like to give a big ups to our engineer, Tone Harley, for making this broadcast possible through the technology that we're using. And most of all, I'd like to thank you for listening. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone. Join us online. All right, it's 12 o'clock noon, and we will continue our broadcast right here on our YouTube channels. Once again, Vince Robinson is my channel. The Journey with Hamtonio is his channel. And we're also on Facebook, so you can check us out there. And I always got to say this, and I know people probably get tired of hearing it, but we really do need for you to subscribe to our channels. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not going to cause you any inconvenience, not going to cost you any money, but it will help us out in terms of making this available to a wider audience. So when you engage in the broadcast, when you make comments, when you subscribe to our channels, it does positive things for the algorithms that enable us to widen our platform. So I'm imploring you, just go ahead, click the subscribe button, hit a notification bell, and then that way you'll get notifications as to when we post content. And this type of content, you're not getting on the regular radio, y'all. You tune into those radio shows and some of those programs, and you hear the same. And bruh, I don't want to denigrate hip hop because it's not all bad, but some of that stuff out there, they're not talking about things that are edifying us. They're talking about things that lower our vibrational frequencies and keep us in a fight or flight mentality and encourage us to do negative things to our sisters, negative things to each other. You know, we really have to raise the bar in terms of our music. And there are artists that are conscious and aware and are using their music to do positive things in our community. But I want you to get back to the presentation that you were making and continue the point before we had to interrupt. And you're muted, Asar. Okay.
Yes. I was just, you know, giving some resources, and there's some, you know, some others, and maybe we'll have to do a more concentrated conversation just on that topic in terms of the evolution and proofs of these terms. And so what's part of the conversation is that there has been a long-standing debate on whether African people who were enslaved here in the United States totally lost all aspects of their traditional cultures, and everything was just brought up anew here in the United States. And that's why I like the text like Africanisms in American culture. And it's another text as well that I want to recommend. And it's another one that has that information as well. It's called The BaNtu Speaking Heritage of the United States by Winifred K. Voss. Right. And this text here is rare now, is out of print. So if you try to find it on YouTube, not YouTube, on like Amazon, somebody's going to try to charge you $3 million for that book. But if you have a local library that has it, you know, go to the library, just sit one time, and it should come up for you, or you should be able to kind of read it from there. And it is a very important book, and it too goes through all of the details in these jazz terms, or these terms like jazz and rap and jive and boog. Like when you talk about, you know, like, well, for me as a former b-boy, the kind of freestyle dancing that we would do, we would just call it booging or booging, you know, kind of short for boogie. But that word boogie, you know, or to boog is an African term. There's a lot of terms that we use in the culture that derive directly from Africa. And that is a conversation in of itself. But that's why it's important, one, for the presence of Africana studies, you know, whether it be formally on the college campus or informally in the community, such as this particular platform here and others that are utilized on the net. These are the conversations that connect us to the history. And the more and more people, you know, have their way in trying to get rid of Black studies, and not have Black history taught in the schools, the more and more we're going to see of our young people who are disconnected from Africa, disconnected from the people. They want to be everything else but African. So we're going to be Hebrew Israelites. We're going to be the lost tribe of Shabazz. We're going to be indigenous Indians. We're going to be Moors. We're going to be Chinese, Mayan, anything but African. And that's problematic. And even if you accepted the fact that they were mixed with Africans, I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, whatever makes these groups good in your eyes is because of the African influence. I can almost guarantee you. Right? And so like this, there's a debate going on right now on who started hip hop. Like there's Puerto Ricans and others claiming that they were at the foundations of hip hop and they equally contributed. And then you ask the critical question, well, what of your culture ended up in hip hop? And this is why there's a problem with trying to start hip hop in 1973 at a party. Hip hop belongs to a larger tradition that goes back to Congo Square. And as long as you try to start, you know, it's like us trying to start Black history with slavery. If you start Black history with slavery, you're just lost in the sauce all the way around, because it assumes you had no history prior to that. And then, you know, who you are is now, you know, disconnected to thousands of years of history and human experience. Right. And it's the same thing when it comes to hip hop. There's no hip hop without jazz. There's no hip hop without funk. There's no James Brown without jazz second line music. His two drummers were trained on second line music. There's none of that without the HBCU band culture. All of those funky drums that you heard with James Brown in the 60s is the stuff that you would hear from the bands, the collective band culture. That's our tradition in the United States that is built on an African template. There was new instruments, even the drum set is an invention of Black people out of New Orleans. Because before that, there was individuals, like there was individual persons who had each particular instrument. And then a brother said, you know, I ain't walking around with all that. I'm putting everything together. We're going to invent a kick drum, and that catapults the music. Like, they need to know this history. So nobody can come around and saying, you know, Puerto Rican, what were y'all doing that we weren't doing prior to y'all coming into the conversation? If Puerto Ricans, if we drop all Puerto Ricans in their culture out of hip hop, what would be left of it that would just make it crumble and no longer be identified as such?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's why the terms itself, like I have video clips. There's a rap group called Stetsasonic that came out in the 80s, right? And it's a song that they a popular song that they had called "Talking All That Jazz," and part of the lyrics in like the third, there's short verses because there's multiple people in the group, and he says something to the nature of jazz. Well, you can call it that, but we have a new format. Because he's talking about, because there was no separation in the early days between what you're talking about as hip hop and jazz. That's why when Rakim comes out, he says, whether it's jazz or the quiet storm, I take the beat and hook up and put it into hip hop form. You code it in a way, you're taking the jazz. Like Rakim talks about like his rhyme style mimicking the sax horn play, and that's why it's it changed rap, because before then everything was I'm the hit the do, I'm the say I'm the do any day. Then here comes Rakim with the jazz iterations, changed the way that people rapped. You know, yes, that's the group Stetsasonic, talking all that jazz. You know, like like people need to know all of this stuff. This when jazz was reintroduced, because there was a period where when the music for hip hop was all jazz, soul, funk, and then in the early 80s it became electronic music, digital. It just sound real, just drum machine, but it had no soul to it. And this is when everybody thought it was going to be a fad. But when they reintroduced jazz, even DJ Jazzy Jeff in the Fresh Prince coming out in 85, 86 had a song, a touch of jazz. That's why it's a touch of jazz studios. When Rakim comes into the mix, when De La Soul and a Tribe Called Quest, Jay Dilla, all the it's the jazz era. That's what made the golden era of hip hop. because of the jazz element. And as soon as we started drifting away from the jazz and started going into this gangster rap, then it changed trajectories. And you know, young people like anything that is rebellious and against authority and parents. And so they flock to this stuff because it's what our parents say we can't listen to. And you know, when you tell your children they can't do something, that inspires them to do it even more. And so, but see, and that's the part of the song where he says the line. But you know, it's a jazz tradition. You know, it's just rap over jazz, and I should say it's jive over jazz. That's why when Digger was playing,
tell the truth, James Brown was old. Tell Eric and Rock came out with I Got Soul. Rap brings back old R&B, and if we would not, people could have forgotten. We want to make this perfectly clear. We're talented and strong and have no fear of those who choose to judge but lack pizzazz. Talking all that jazz.
Now, if you could pause it right there. What they just said was such an important aspect of hip hop culture and history that I don't want this to be overlooked. Because remember, James Brown was old already by 67, 68, 69. The people who brought him back were the hip hoppers. And what people don't understand is that hip hop, see, I have a presentation coming up in a couple of weeks at the Sheikh Anta Diop conference on Jashe and hip hop being a Kimoyo tradition, an African religious tradition. Because at the heart of hip hop culture is ancestral veneration. And the way that we keep the ancestors alive is to remake their songs and their traditions. I mean, remake their songs and remix them and give them a new flavor and a new light. We call that sampling and remixing. That's the tradition. So when he said that James Brown was old until the hip hoppers came, you know, he's saying that we bring the elders back. Otherwise, these music would die, jazz would die. But ancestral veneration is a central part of the tradition of hip hop.
Of Black folks,
which of course is as you said it perfectly, which is a part of African culture, African people. See, if we divorce it from that conversation, then hip hop don't make sense, and we won't know where the drift came.
But brother Asar, let me jump in and ask the question on that, because that's what I wanted to kind of bring together, you know, by us doing that and making those connections. You think we can get our young folks interested in, because my attack and my way of trying to do this, for number one, I know most of us as a people are followers. And I know that they talk about you're not going to get everybody on the same page at one time. So I think that's why it's so important for us to control certain mediums, like, you know, the music and the images and things like that our people are seeing. I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks that is stopping us from moving forward with our type of indoctrination. Because everything is, like Vince talked about education in the beginning. Everything in your culture that you teach and all that is about a certain indoctrination. Unfortunately, we are living and dealing with the European indoctrination, and that's what's got our spirit all crazy, and we all out of joint in reference to that. So it's so important for us, you know, which I was going to try to start this image campaign to deal with controlling those mediums in order for us to get our stuff. So I'm saying, with that being said, because you talked about turning some of this knowledge into something tangible that our young folks and our people can grasp and turn that into, maybe some of it can equate to money, like you're saying, or obtaining that food, things of that nature, But my approach, which probably can work simultaneously with what you're just saying, though, is in locking the mindset, or something like what the last poet said, what, free the mind and the behind will follow. So I'm thinking if we was able through the imagery and things of that nature to drum up some type of interest that would employ them to hey, let me take a look at this stuff. I think at the same time, like what you're saying, bringing forth the information showing that long ancestral connection, that genuine foundational connection with what they're doing might stir up some interest to look at some of those ancestral traditions and values, and maybe come around intellectually, to understanding some of the stuff that our ancestors have laid down. Your thoughts on that?
Yes. Y'all remember the movie The Karate Kid?
Yes.
Did y'all see both Karate Kids? The original and the one with Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son?
I didn't see that one. Yeah.
All right. Well, y'all at least remember the first iteration where Daniel's son was instructed to wash the car and to wax the car. And he's confused because, he came there to learn Kung Fu, or he learned karate. They changed it to Kung Fu in the second, but to learn karate. And he had to teach him a lesson in that moment. In the second movie, that scene is changed because, again, the fighting style is now Kung Fu for the one with Jaden Smith. But he has him putting on a jacket and taking off a jacket. Putting on a jacket, taking off a jacket. The first movie, wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. Right? In both films and in both of those scenes, the martial arts master is teaching them that Kung Fu or karate or martial arts is everywhere. In the second film, Jaden Smith's character's teacher, which is Jackie Chan, he says everything is Kung Fu. Like the simplest thing, like putting on a jacket, is teaching you how to block. It's the same thing with the wax on. So if anybody who's ever taken any kind of martial arts, these are certain blocking techniques, but you can also use it, of course, to wash and rinse your vehicle, right? There's a Chinese proverb that says, before enlightenment, chop wood and fetch water. After enlightenment, chop wood and fetch water. Right? Like nothing is going to change just because you enlighten on something. You still need to know basic things. But now you understand it more deeply, you can apply it to other areas. And it's the same thing even with hip-hop culture. So as a person who DJ'd and produced, I love what we call digging in the crates and going into various different record stores and finding old records and new records and finding those samples that I can use to create a new interpretation and a new beat. Right? Now, if I'm sitting in a university with a bunch of young scholars and I'm trying to teach them how to write books and texts and articles and the importance of references, I teach them first how to dig in the crates. because digging in the crates is the equivalent of going to the library, listening to the whole track for that soul sample that you're going to use in the construction of making your beat. If I could teach you how to make beats and to know about harmonies and 4x4 beats and scales and tones, I can teach you about how to write, how to create a narrative, how to take those pieces, those little excerpts that you get from this book and this book and this book, and to create a monster track, which is your own article or your own book, because you know how to dig in the crates. Digging in the crates is wax on, wax off, right? You got to understand, like, you know, who your audience is and how certain things can be applied. You know, hip hop has within it, you know, you call it braggadocious, but it's not about braggadocious. It's about, what's the word? See, and when you're religious, you do what we call affirmations. In affirmation, you know, you're speaking certain things into existence on your life. When you have a vision board, rappers do that for themselves in terms of the rhyme. They're just affirmations. They build confidence. That's why in the Joshe tradition and the reiteration, what we're calling MCing and rapping is called afoshe. Afoshe is a Yoruba phrase, and it's about the ashe in your speech, the ability to make things happen or to make a reality on command. That's the confidence that if you have afoshe, you can speak in front of people and articulate well and be able to get a message across. You can speak your life into existence, which is why you don't go around speaking death. Which is why, like, Biggie Smalls has an album, his first album is called Ready to Die.
Ready to Die.
Tupac, all he talked about was going to jail and having visions of being killed. You don't speak those things into existence. You speak life. And then there's another aspect of hip hop what people don't realize is that when you introduce yourself to the public, you let them know who you are, where you're from, and the struggles that you've had to overcome to get here. Because hip hop is about towering over adversities and learning new strategies to win in life.
Brother, so
go ahead.
It's just to say something right there. So that's why it's so important to control it, the information.
Yes, but you know, you're fighting an uphill battle. You know, because it's not so much the gatekeepers anymore. There's no gates. Now you have the internet with any and everybody can voice their opinion, from the most brilliant PhD to the brother who was in the retarded classes or the short bus sitting in the corner. They all have equal access to the net and a cell phone that can record them, and you can post it at the click of a button. So it's not only about controlling information, it's about resonating with the people. Because again, Black people are show me people. That's why, like, you know, people don't understand the culture in terms of why do they wear the jewelry? Why do they have to have the clothes? Because one, I just told you in terms of strategies on how to win and overcome. And here's my proof. Now we can debate it, but it's the logic of young folks, right? Here's my proof. I got the Jews, I got the car. You know, my spirit, my skill set, my believing in myself allowed me to win. And here's, you know, some of the proof of that. Now, as of course you grow and mature, that conversation changes, and you see that, you know, because hip hop was such a young culture, you didn't have elders in hip hop until now, right? The LL Cool J's, the Nas's, and just, you know, their conversations are different when they get older, you know. So on one level, you got to expand that young people talk about young people's stuff, and they have a young person mentality, right? You know, the brain doesn't fully develop until age 24, 25. They're going to say and do some young people-ish, right? So it's, again, it's just understanding the people, being able to have a message that resonates with them both aesthetically and substantively. But more importantly, it's institutionalizing the tradition. So like when I go back home to New Orleans, right, and we talk about the second line, you see elders, men and women in the middle, teenagers and babies, all out there in the Indian outfits, in whatever garb, they all playing instruments. There are schools set up and learning how there's just family traditions. There's certain groups that is just in the family. So they pass it on. You know, like in my household, you know, my dad's from New Orleans. He was born in Opelousas, but he's from New Orleans. He moved there when he was 4 years old, right? In my house, we had trombones, sax, drums, guitars. My dad was, you know, of course, he was in the brass bands back in New Orleans, but he also was in the church band, you know, when we moved to Houston, right? And so I just grew up in the household, and in these early days, we couldn't listen to hip hop in the house. It was all Take Five, you know, BB and CC, and of course, all the soul music back in the day. I used to have to argue with my dad on the validity of hip hop, and it is not all bad, and had him listen to certain things, you know. And he finally allowed it in the house. The first CD we owned was LL Cool J's "Mama Said Knock You Out" CD, right? But it's that tradition. There's a reason why, like, all those people came out for Frankie Beverly, and in no time, with just like word of mouth, in a couple of days, thousands of people ready to go, because it's a tradition.
A lot of people. It got to be about 10,000 people out there, man. I was like, my God.
Exactly. Because it's a tradition there, from young folks to elders. And so we have to institutionalize it to where it's a participatory thing, from elders to young folks. And in understanding that cycle, and things are going to change in terms of the sound, but there's still a connectedness there, that the integrity of the tradition, it maintains, even with its iterations. And that's what hip hop doesn't have at the moment. And that's why, you know, because people don't understand, there's hip hop and then there's rap. And rap music is everything that we argue against. Because hip hop already, as a culture, it has already its moniker: peace, love, unity, and having fun. If it's not that, it's not hip hop. So the moment, like there's a rapper by the name of Special Ed, and he's known for that song, I Got It Made, I Got It Made, that came out in the 80s. And he was recently on a Drink Champ show, which is a podcast where they do a lot of drinking, and hip hoppers come and tell their stories about their life and things in hip hop music. And he made the statement that NWA ushered in the destruction of hip hop and black people because of the gangster rap stuff, and he caught some backlash for that. But there was a lot of people who have grown up and was like, yeah, is right. We had C. Dolores Tucker back in the day who was arguing against that. Like I made a post on Facebook that we owe C. Dolores Tucker an apology because she was going hard against gangster rap back in the day, and talked about, envision where we are now in the culture if this proliferates. Even Common, back then he was known as Common Sense, got into a beef with Ice Cube and basically the whole West Side Connection because he made a song, I Used to Love Her, and her being a metaphor for hip hop. And there's a section in the song where he talks about how hip hop came to the West Coast and then totally changed. The Afrocentric message was lost. The soul was gone. Everybody being gangster rappers. And so all these folks in LA and stuff were offended. And this is, so like even early in hip hop, they knew like there's this hip hop and then there's this is something else that's not hip hop. And the problem is those who are outside of the culture lumps it all together because you're using there's an aspect of it in terms of rapping over music that is common between the two. And so that emphasis has to be made. Like, no, that's not hip hop. This is hip hop. That's not hip hop. That's something else. And so it's the institutionalization, the separation and conceptualization of and reiteration of what hip hop is, so that the conversation can be expanded, and then all of that which is good of it can be maintained because it's just changed form. Even Miles Davis, there's an interview with Miles Davis where he's talking about the hip hop and how hip hop has become such a big phenomenon in the 90s. And he was talking about traditional jazz and should we teach, and he was like, no, jazz needs to be, because he was emphasizing that jazz was just the music of the day, and if you try to keep jazz in that particular mind frame, you lose the people. Like, this is the new form of it now. And I know that Robert Glasper has been having that conversation again, the pianist out of Houston, Texas, because he did all the traditional jazz, but he wanted to do something different. And so, but he got more famous doing it in his way that's more connected to the hip hop culture. And this was something that he, reiterated, that, it's adaptive. Our music is adaptive. So that's why I named it Joshe as a play on words. It's the Ashe of jazz. If you understand what the Ashe is, and it's different iterations. So that's when I say Afoshe, the Ashe of speech, of potent speech. There's Orinshe, which is the Ashe of the music. So whether you're DJing or whether you're a producer of the music. Then there is Ashe Gun, because people understand that martial arts, we spoke about martial arts earlier, is an integral part of hip hop culture and development. You know, and then there's the Iyashe, the drawing, the graffiti, but we're not limited to graffiti. It includes all the art, the visual art, urban visual art, right? It's the Ashe, the soul, the spirit that is important because it's going to manifest itself differently. So as long as you can keep the Ashe, the integrity of the Ashe intact, then everything else, you know, will fall into place. And you'll be able to easily adapt it to whatever time period and whatever region you're in, because you understand what the Ashe is. You understand what soul is. That's what Kimoyo is. Moyo is a word for soul, spirit, heart. And we didn't have the words because we lost most of the words here in the United States. But there's a phenomenon in linguistics called a semantics, that you still have the underlying meanings and linguistic associations, even if you adopt a whole bunch of words from foreign folks. So we didn't have umoyo, we didn't have ashe, so we just called it soul music. Because all of our music, the spirit, it comes from the spirit. It comes from the soul, the ashe, that the spark that gives us all life. And this is the heart of the conversation. You never lose the soul. Matter of fact, Scarface, the rapper, has an interview asking who stole the soul. Why is it no soul music, no love music coming out that's being promoted for the culture? Even Tank, who's an R&B singer, was and he said something that and I know that he's not on this level of reading, but Amos Wilson said the same thing in terms of it's your love, Black folks' love for each other that is the greatest threat. And if we could promote anything that doesn't strengthen the love of each other, we can continue to exploit and make money off of, you know, y'all dysfunction. Going back, it all comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation. The reason why this information is detrimental to them is because it empowers us and it forces us to love each other and strengthen and empower us, because when we love ourselves, they can no longer exploit us. And their whole existence is based upon our exploitation.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And I think it's a good point for us to end the conversation on, because really, I mean, in the final analysis, love really is the answer. And the more we love ourselves, the better off we'll be. You invoked Robert Glasper. Robert Glasper is supposed to hit the stage somewhere around 8:00 tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing him. And I just, again, I want to thank you for bringing us this knowledge. 2 weeks, I wish I could be there. I don't know if you plan to circulate this on social media, but I would love to see that presentation and perhaps host a program where you can share that information with our viewing audience, because I'm sure that they would want to hear it and take in that great information. Before we leave, I just want to give you an opportunity to promote anything that you would like to promote. Share your website and bring folks into Asar Imhotep's digital world.
Yes, I'm on all social media under Asar Imhotep. I'm going through some issues with my old domain name, asarimhotep.com. So you can find me on osirimhotep.com, OSIR, and then IMHOTEP.com. So Osir is really how you would say it, the name in a modern African language. So it's the correct way. But when I adopted Asar, that's how it was being pronounced in the early 2000s. So I'm not mad at it. So I go by both. You can say Osir or Asar. it's fine. But you can go to osirmhotep.com to find me directly. But on all the other social media, it's going to be Asar, ASAR, Imhotep.com. I mean,
right.
Imhotep.
Got you. Brother Antonio, any parting words?
Yeah, I just one of the takeaways I think we should really internalize is when he made the statement about how, in a sense, how Tupac and Biggie kind of spoke stuff into the existence. So the importance of what you say, how these words are vibratory energy that goes out there, and your consciousness of what you think and what you bring in. That's all important, And when we talk about education and institutions, something that Dr. Leonard Jeffries always say, whatever it is that you got, Africanize it. Bring that culture into it, into the mix of it, so you can feel it, because it's inside of you, it's in your DNA. Basically, what Brother Asar was just talking about, that stuff has been traveling with us all along. We don't even know where we're getting it from, but you're spewing it out, you're adapting these words and terms and things like that, and don't even know where it come from. So that's why we need to have more platforms and research and read.
Yes, indeed. Well, I just want to thank you again for being with us today, brother. I'm always amazed at your knowledge and your wisdom, and I could sit and listen for hours, but time is of the essence, and I got 2.5 hours on the road in front of me to come to your great state of Pennsylvania, if we want to call it that. Thanks again for joining us, and to those of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for being with us. I know Brother Gerard has been with us. Malikia or Malkia Hampton also shouted out at you, Brother Asar, a couple of times. She said she had to go to work, but it was an honor listening to you, and I wholeheartedly agree. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day, everyone. Peace.
Peace. All right, my brother.